You're listening to Post-Dramatic Stress, hosted by Charlotte D. A weekly podcast to connect creatives and communicate about the highs, lows and laughs of being in a creative industry.
Hi guys, and welcome to episode 11 of Post-Dramatic Stress. I'll be joined today by two fabulous guests along with my co-host Isabella Jacqueline, who I lovingly call Bella. But today I'll be joined by the guys who have started and running very successfully the Hub Studio, which runs in Perth and in Sydney. They brought along their daughter Stella to our recording, who is our youngest podcast guest, who hasn't even reached a year old in this world. And what we've done today is made a bit of a best of their recording. So here's the best bits of our chat with Ollie and Nat from the Hub Studio.
But I have always done acting as well. I lived in Sydney for 7 years, and then Ollie and I created the Hub together while we were living there, and now we're back here. I've created my own verbatim theatre show.
What's that about?
It's about motherhood. It's called Motherload. I guess you could call it documentary theatre. It was really awesome, directed by a guy called Dean Kerry, who specialises in verbatim theatre and runs the Actors Centre Australia in Sydney and Leichhardt there.
Yeah, it's very good to get him.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And we're looking at redoing that as well. So yeah,
excellent.
That's a bit about me. Ollie.
So a Perth guy. We're both Perth people. And then went the usual road, I guess. Went to Curtin University and ended up, luckily enough, at that time at NIDA in Sydney, and that's why I went to Sydney. And then spent 14 years there, and I think. And was an actor, and am an actor, but it was an interesting journey coming out of NIDA, obviously, and then feeling like, hello Sydney, it's a very, very different energy to Perth, and feeling completely disconnected and completely just sort of in a vacuum of information, if you like, and doing terrible work, or so I thought, but doing lots of it. Not necessarily paid work either, but just working at the local theatre companies and things like the New Theatre and stuff like that.
When you say terrible, do you feel like it was terrible because you didn't want to do it, or terrible because you look back at yourself and think, that wasn't my best performance?
I think in hindsight what happened through drama school is although a great place, it's a bit of a sausage factory, you see, and it was a very cerebral process, and so I came out of there with the idea of saying, right, now go and be famous, and there's like 20 other people that are all going to go and be famous at the same time, and it's daunting. So the 99-1 rule is that you get craft training, but you get no experience of how to live as an artist, and so then you come out the other side and you're like, right, well 99% of the time I'm just trying to figure out how to eat and live and work, and then 1% of the time you're actually acting, and so I fell in a big hole, emotionally, mentally, and then clawing yourself back out of all of that process was very much about meeting Natalie and coming back to Perth. And so
I think we really needed each other. We're quite different in a lot of ways and similar in other ways, but Ollie, you can be quite a dreamer, and maybe you need my practicality to kind of say, what can we practically do to move forward?
The key moment was, for me anyway, was coming off the back of a big musical that I was lucky enough to get. Oh, no, there was two key moments. The first one was like producing a big musical in Sydney. We had Machine Gun Fellatio, we had John O'Connell, who is Baz Luhrmann's choreographer. We'd raised $300,000 out of Perth to do this big musical, put on at the Carriage Works. Had the best of the best, bands and all that shit, and it tanked. It completely flopped. And I remember my drama teacher, Kevin, who we eventually set the studio up with, giving me a hug in the foyer of the Carriage Works, right, which is ginormous, because no one came. And this is a 300-seat venue.
Did you still put it on for the three people?
No, we didn't run it that night. And subsequently, we actually did end up doing okay as it developed. But we basically ended up just doing a great show and having spent all the money, which was extremely difficult process to go through. And so I think eventually I just threw my hands in the air and just went, oh, fuck, I can't do this anymore. And just went back to Perth and reconnected again with this sense of just doing it for the love of it, rather than trying to make it into something, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I remember at that time I was 28 and just feeling really, really frustrated, and I met Nat. And we were doing a theatre show at, I always forget the name of it. Luxbar, thank
There's
you.
an amphitheatre out the back there. I don't know if it's still called Luxbar. On Beaufort Street in Mount Lawley.
And I think Natalie was just a big breath of fresh air for me at that time. And so then I got happier, right? And you were doing a show and working, and we were just sort of having fun, I think, probably.
Yeah.
And subsequently, because of that, there was a musical called The Sapphires, which became the movie, The Sapphires, and they were auditioning for lead male, like just the only white guy, basically. And I happened
You're like,
to be...
I'm a white guy.
Yeah. And so Annie Murder Monks, you know, she gave me an audition. And this is one of the distinct advantages about Perth, is that the funding system, they needed to book people out of Perth because it was a co-pro with Black Swan.
Black Swan and Belvoir.
Black Swan and Belvoir. And so there you go, bang. Now you're on a national tour with Christine Arnoux and all these other wonderful people, Casey Donovan and Jimmy Varney, and that was just an extraordinary adventure.
Yeah.
Every dollar I got in at the end of each week, I spent every dollar of it because I still hadn't put the wheels on the ground. And then I was 31, and that show finished, and I was back... we'd moved back to Sydney at that point, but I was back being a waiter at Centennial Park.
And then what happened? How did the hub studio?
Well, we were just looking. Well, you can tell the story. Sorry.
I don't know.
Frustration, pure frustration.
Yeah, frustration. Actually, having no other option. Well, what am I going to do? Am I just going to sit around? You kind of see these people in LA, and they're 40, and they've kind of done nothing with their life. They've,
Not even 40, there's 50, 60.
50, and it's quite sad to, go there and see those people and think, well, what do I really want out of my life? How can I still work in this industry and do something that I enjoy? Hey, let's chat to Kevin, who was head of acting at NIDA.
We're talking about Kevin Jackson, for those of you that don't know.
Yeah, Kevin Jackson, sorry. And we approached him and said, let's get one class together. It started off that small, 12 of us going to do one class with him. And I think a lot of actors do that, but then they can't be asked doing it again. And that's where Ollie's really good at doing it.
We wrote down on a piece of paper, and it's the central core of this idea of your plan A and your plan B coming together. And it was the idea of what is it that you can do tomorrow. And that's the core of entrepreneurial thinking, is the idea of problem solving. So it's what is it that I can do tomorrow? And the only thing we could do tomorrow was run an acting class. That's literally what was in our power, And the idea of running an acting class for me was just the idea of giving up at that point. And then so we did one class, and then we did another one and another one and another one. And I think that the awakening point at that, I remember we were both away for your brother's birthday in Los Angeles, and in Vegas. I'm sorry. And I came back because we had 4 classes on, and I looked at I just added up the numbers if you got everyone in through the door, and it was like $25,000, and I thought, oh my God, you could actually do something with that. And you could see just the power of the daily in and out of that kind of business.
Sorry, Bella. I think something you touched on there was that power of when things aren't going right in your life or perceived to be not going right, using that energy to do something with and to create. Yeah.
So this is 7 years ago. Now, I believe... So the thing that I'm the most passionate about as an actor is the idea of actor entrepreneurialism, which is to say that you can have a career. You just have to go and get it. And at the core of entrepreneurial thinking, as I said before, is just the problem-solving thing. And the question there is, what is it that I can do tomorrow that's in my power to make the change? And I think, unfortunately, a lot of actors suffer from the bipolar nature of an agency system, of a casting agency and agency system that dictates to you that, hey, don't worry, darling, I've got your career. Yeah. You just be a good actor and we'll figure out the rest, right? Along with the 150 other people on my books.
Yeah.
And of course, their main master, yes, is to you on some level. I'm not saying they're not good people, but they've got a business to run. A lot of people that don't have the, well, what is it that I can do tomorrow mentality, or are coming up with, don't worry, darling, we can figure it out for you, just let us handle the work side of things, then you're left in this power vacuum. And things like podcasts, that's something you can do tomorrow, you know. None of which I'm saying is easier.
Yeah.
None of which ultimately has to do with the specific craft of can I act or can I not act, all of which has to do with business.
And for you didn't really have like a plan A and a plan B, did you? You kind of, your plan A became a bit of a plan B, which also then has turned out to be a sort of plan A, because you were saying your tomorrow thing that you did. At that point, you said that you were feeling like it came out of desperation and frustration, but it didn't quite turn into a plan B, did it? So do you believe in plan A's and B's?
That's a good question.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think your plan A is your plan B, and I think you have to swing with how that. It's not as simple as I just want to act and I'm going to get an acting job. It's about flowing with how that can change and look. It's not just black and white.
I think a lot of us as actors think that, similar to what you were saying before, we just think, okay, well, I'm an actor, that's it, now I sit. But I think today things are so different. Actors are doing more, performers are doing more, we are doing more as people. And I wonder what your opinion is on, is it enough just to say I'm an actor and that's it? Or do you need to be a business person? Do you need to be a musician? Do you need to be a presenter? What?
I always come back to a good friend of ours, Joel Jackson, who's doing extraordinary things. And I saw him in a class that he came and did with us with Anthony Skews. And I saw all of his business ability inside the acting thing. Now, he does do other things. But he is pursuing acting, right? But the way he's doing it is extremely entrepreneurial. For Peter Allen, Not the Boy Next Door, he didn't get an audition. He got an audition. Does that make sense? He put the tapes in and said, look at me. I don't have the balls to do that or the gumption to do that. I sort of do it in my own way, which is using the studio in one sense as a vehicle. So I think in any sort of road to success, there is all the factors are the same things. Whether it's a business that you're doing it for or you're doing it for yourself as an actor, which is also a business, right? I think all of the same rules apply. So it's the democratization of everything which is happening. So as the emerging digital media market has come on, it's democratized everything. So you have the best camera and editing equipment there's ever been at the cheapest price point it's ever been. You have the access to the most amount of people at the cheapest price point that's ever been. That's unprecedented.
Yeah.
So that's why I always say it's never been a better time to be a professional working actor. But it's also like saying, here's a big blank piece of canvas, now paint me on Monet.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, where do I start? Anyone can do it, and that's also difficult. So it's the democratization of everything, which is also good and also bad. So I think more than ever, any actor needs to understand, any people across business need to become entrepreneurial in thinking. Otherwise, you're not necessarily creating that point of difference. So it's the Seth Godin thing of saying, find your tribe. You don't need millions of people in order to be a success. You just need to find your tribe. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. And so I think it's about, as that terrible corporate saying is, pick a lane and bowl in it, which can seem frustrating as well. But the good thing, if you can use both systems in one sense, is that you do have the traditional casting system. The casting agent rings the agent rings you, and all of a sudden you can go from zero to hero and be on mainstream television. You've also got the other option of saying, well, I can create my own work and end up on television or whatever your sort of thing is, like the Van Vuren brothers, for example, who created, Bondi Hipsters, and millions of other examples, that have gone through the YouTube system, which is getting picked up by SBS and ABC and those kinds of places. So I do think the single biggest issue facing most graduating actors is that their business acumen is way too low. And it's leaving, and that's where a lot of the frustration and depression is coming from, because they're left, as they say, as a mushroom.
Because they're almost in our age now, which is very like self-promotion focused, social media focused even. You're saying actors are graduating without being prepped for that aspect of
100% I'm saying that, yeah.
So...
And also what's worse, I think, in some respects, and I'm buttering my own bread here, right? But I think the full-time 1, 2 and 3 year training programs can potentially be doing more damage because they're not up to date in terms of they're not keeping up with how fast the industry is going, and they're not integrated. So you're removed from the industry, and then there's this idea of we will present you to the industry, the idea of a graduation showcase. And then the idea of that is that all the agents come and they go, yes, darling, yes, darling, yes, darling, yes, darling, yes, darling. And then all of a sudden you have an agent, and then all of a sudden you're booking work, and then all of a sudden, bang, right?
But
Which
as
does
you were
happen.
saying before, there's 20 newbie stars
But
coming out.
what
so-
happens when that doesn't happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Or when it dries up.
Yeah. And again, there's a falsity around the idea of making it as an actor. There's the idea that at some point I make it, and then once I've made it, I cross a threshold, and then forever and a day I'm swatting away award-winning scripts and getting paid millions of dollars, right? If you take the lid off any of those major stars, I think, like the Kate Blanchetts or the whoever's, they're all business people. They all have the locus of control, which is that they're working inside companies where they have a say, regardless of them being an actor or an actress or whatever. They're actually... They have a circle of control. They're in the center of something that they can control, and that's the biggest problem with actors, is that by nature of the agency system, the casting agency
They're
system,
left quite powerless.
you give your sense of control and you say you are the custodian of that, and that's the single biggest problem and causer for
So
all
true.
of this depression.
That's so true. And then, you're not only that, with that loss of control, you then feel that everything's a validation or a not validation of how good you are.
And what's
as an actor and
what's
as a
worse
human.
is I see all the time actors going, how do I speak to my agent? I'm not really sure, blah, blah, blah. And I used to have this. You'd go, hi, and they go, yes, darling, yes, yes.
They go, I'm busy, I'm about to make an important phone call.
Yeah, everything's good, it's good, it's fine, yeah, look, or worse, well, we've put it out there and they just, look, I don't know what to say, darling. I mean, they know
like,
you.
"You're
They
not
know
in.
your work. They think you're
not
great. They know your work. There's just nothing ready for you yet, I had an agent tell me that I'll start working when I'm 42.
4 more
And I was
years.
25.
And you were like, well, that's a bit late for me.
But I think you should hear more of Natalie's story, because the other really interesting component to this, which you were talking about, is the idea of what happens when you want to become a parent.
Yes. Because a lot of people won't even, I know for me personally, I'm absolutely phobia about relationships. I don't do them because I don't believe that you can juggle ambition and love. I'm you can have your love as your ambition as your love. But you guys, just not being content with finding the love aspect, you've also started a family and it's working. So I'm sure our other listeners who are similar to me would like to know about how on earth that is possible.
The locus of control is the sense of saying the business gives us every excuse to keep doing the stuff that we're doing, and there's no one that tells us that we can't. The only people that tell us that we can't is when customers don't buy the things that we're selling.
Yeah.
And so Natalie says, late last year, my passion point is as an actor and a mother. How do I fold them together? And then all of a sudden she's in a show that's important to her, that made money, that was really successful and has a life, but none of which came effectively around because of her great acting ability. Not saying you're not, but it was just the business of acting rather than the craft of,
So what steps was
itself.
it that got you to that position, would you say? Or
Just
what mindset, or what sort of... It's probably a multitude of
actually doing. It's simple as that, isn't it? You guys are doing. Go, okay. It's about relationships as well. Who do I know? What can I do? And approaching people if you don't have those relationships.
But, for example, Nat was late in terms of booking a theatre.
Yes.
Really was just completely out of the cycle. But the tenacity is to say, no, we'll figure it out, right? And so I think you'd always admired Dean Carey's work, right?
Yeah, I love his work, yeah.
And so we always have this thing of action emails. If you want to write to the person, just do it. Just give it a go. And so she did, and had a really good response. Anyway, I'm taking...
Then there's the risk of you've approached this person and you weren't quite ready, and you've given them an image of you, and then that's it for
You
that.
just have to be authentic.
I think you can have little to no skill. It doesn't matter.
We
As long as you've got determination. I mean, and it's all levels as well. You're not going to be approaching, Steven Spielberg, because he's never going to get back to you. Or maybe he will. But, yeah, I don't know.
we on Thursday, at the moment with the studio, we're trying to get in major actors and directors, Australian. And they're not particularly difficult to get hold of to go through the agency system. But, I already got 2 no's from fairly significant people, but at least they're getting back to you. And I've already had 3 yeses from other, really significant people, and they're getting back to you.
Let's talk about the Hub Studio for a minute, because we've just touched on it. So what exactly do you do there? What happens there? I know because I've been there and had the benefit of having some amazing training, but just
some of us are like me and we haven't a clue, and we'd like to know.
Yeah.
Traditionally, the Hub Studio was set up as a home for working professional actors and creatives. The idea of it is that it's a safe place and an empowering place. It was built out of the anti-space of, fuck, what is my life? Where do I go? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was built as an antidote to all of that. It was to say, no, we are a group of professional people, most of which are trained and have gone through places which are extremely hard to get into. And so it shouldn't be so difficult. It doesn't have to be so difficult. And so it's meant to be an empowerment place, if you like, an incubator. So the big thing that we've always said is that it isn't a drama school. Now, you can equally say it is a drama school. You do acting training. And, of course, that's what we do. So we run, professional development classes in what's called the repertoire, or we call it the repertoire, which is film work, theatre work, improvisation work, movement work, voice work, and now business. And that's the meat and potatoes. That's what we do, right? So we just bring in the best coaches that we can to train in those disciplines, and that's it.
And you've got some big name coaches, actually. In fact,
Yeah.
like if you're someone who's not able to go to WAPA, for example, or you just didn't make it this year, or you're not ready at the moment.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Well, yeah, I mean, last year even we had some great people come from WAPA and teach us voice or teach us
We just had
movement
Donald Woodburn in Sydney for our emerging actor program, and he's just the ex-head of voice at WAPA. He just literally left, happened to be in Sydney, and did some work with us. So the idea, but hang on, why are we not a drama school? I wanted to finish that because I think it's important, the mental difference. So we're always saying to actors when you come in, it's an actor and a coach rather than a student and a teacher. And so the mental mindset difference is, excuse my French, but why the fuck are you here? And we always ask everyone that. Why the fuck are you here? Like, what is it that you actually want? Because if you don't know what you want and you aren't pushing for that, then we can't teach you or we can't help you, right? So it's about the locus of control, again, this thing, which is taking responsibility for your training and taking responsibility for your craft and saying, well, lean in, do the work. But don't just do the work. Actually push yourself further than you've ever pushed yourself in a very safe environment where the wheels aren't necessarily on the ground. I mean, we do casting workshops with Stevie Ray and other people like that. And in those environments, I say, look, yeah, sure, it's a workshop, but you're actually auditioning. Like, you've got to be very careful. Be prepared, But in other environments, it is a theory. It's an exploration, if you like. And so hopefully the idea is that it's a meeting of the minds, rather than sitting in the background and chewing on your bubblegum and going, oh, what is it? What are we doing next? And that's the point of difference for me, is that you're not a student. I would never treat anybody like a student.
It's almost like you're saying it's a school for acting entrepreneurs rather than just actors. So, because I think there are a lot of people, I don't want to generalise, but I think there are a lot of actors that are just going to training because they are actors. That's what they call themselves. They're actors. I am in things. Sometimes I get auditions. But you're right, that next step, I think, is from my interactions with people so far, there's not that next sort of level of initiative and like, okay, well, what am I going to do for myself? Where am I going to go?
Yes.
How am I going to mould myself? What else is important? I guess the what else is important is what's missing. We just train and we're like, yes, the craft, but then what? Like, you could be the best actor and then you're just, waiting for a call? Like,
sure.
I think...
Sure, yeah. I think, but if you are the best actor, ideally you're not just waiting, because it's not the best actors that get all the work.
It's the best business people who happen to be actors.
Yeah, it's lots of things, there's certainly the right place at the right time as a factor, but also don't forget that this is of any industry that I can see, it may be music as well or dance potentially, but it has the most fluid status dynamic of any industry that I can think of. And what that means is you can go from hero to zero and zero to hero many times over. And we've had this, there's people in the studio that you go, oh, hi mate, nice to meet you, and you don't think twice, and then the next thing they're like major TV sort of roles, and they're off, and you might ideally you respect everyone, but you might not have picked it, if that makes sense. And then equally those people are back, back at that, in that cycle. Because the harsh reality of Australia is that the average annual income for an actor is like between $11,000 and $16,000 a year. So from a tax perspective, it's a hobby. Yeah. Like that's the brutal reality of it. But then the other side of it as well is that even if you might do a film, or you might, the only major regular income you're going to get is through the repetition, which is what, a TV show, right? Or even when you're doing a feature film, you can get really good money, but you need to do back-to-back features and then head off to America to start really making it big. And so I know it sounds very depressive, but I think in one sense the reality of it is that there's a very cyclical nature to our industry anyway. So within that then, what does it mean to be a professional actor?
Yeah.
And I always say it's what's going on between your ears. It's not am I working or am I not working. It's what is my sense of self, and how am I making passionate pursuit of that objective, as KJ would say, which is my career. It will always go in swings and roundabouts in this industry. And so I don't think professional actors should define themselves by the amount of work they're getting. I think that's a dangerous trap.
So what do you think they should be defining themselves by?
Loaded question.
Yeah, that's a great question. The pursuit of excellence is professionalism for me. And it doesn't matter what that is. Being the nicest guy in the room, or the best actor in the room, or knowing the most amount of stuff generally, or the most well-read, or the most whatever. It's the pursuit of excellence.
Sorry. So with you were mentioning that you teach business now at the Hub Studio. What sort of things would you be teaching then? If we're looking at ourselves as it's clear, I think we're making the assumption that it's not enough just to be an actor these days and just sit there and wait. We need to do more. We need to know our product. We need to blaze our own trail. So in doing that, we need to think about ourselves as a business.
Yes.
Which I'm assuming is the same sort of thinking that you're having, maybe not. And then if so, what sort of areas are you teaching people?
Hopefully it's aspirational in the one sense of saying you can have the career that you want. You might not get everything you want, but then who does? So there's that side of things, which is saying it's also saying don't wait. It's also saying so we teach the idea of. I want people to get angry, actually. That's kind of what I want them to do, is go, no, fuck it. It is my turn. Like, I can actually do this, And then it comes back to very practical hooks, because I think actors are very heart-led people. And you can get sort of, we get a comment. I always do a focus form, which is, okay, what do you want? And by specifically what date, specifically what date is it going to become a reality, And everyone says, I want to be an actor and I want to get paid for it, and it'll happen within the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, right? And you say, okay, cool. That's way too general.
Yeah.
Like, what does that actually mean?
How do you work towards
Everyone just wants to be a working actor. So you can divide the field immediately by saying, well, are you a man or are you a woman, right? And then you can say, well, what's your ethnic background? What's your... And then you can say, okay, well, which TV show? Australia, America, where? Because it dictates specifically what you're going to be looking for. And then you think, okay, if it's Home and Away, you know that it's Mulliners that you need to go and get to know, because they're the casting agent for that particular show, right? And then you need to look like the people that are on that show, or at least have a point of difference. And then so it's quite simple once you work the process back. And I think that practicality is something that we really lose. So again, the reason the studio started is because Natalie quite rightly said, oh God, you're getting so carried away. Just pull it all back. And what is the thing that you can do tomorrow? And that's ideally what you want to teach, is then the repetition of that process. And then what I call getting on the train, which is about finding true and genuine accountability. So if you didn't do it, you're in shit, right? Or you're letting people down, or there's money that you're going to be spending, something to get you truly and genuinely accountable. And I think the reason why the studio has survived in one sense is because we were in deep shit if it didn't.
Yeah, okay.
You know?
So there was a stake. Like, what is your stake?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you work it out, ideally, from that point. I mean, it doesn't have to be like life or death, but the accountability measure can be as simple as booking a phone call with a mentor to talk about your career, and then or putting a timeline on something, or just something that actually puts the wheels on the ground.
What's your thoughts on, a lot of people say surrender, but you're saying don't surrender, be proactive. So are you still in the mindset of all the people that go, just surrender to it? And if so, how on earth do you surrender to it as well as being proactive?
Surrendering to your fate, do you mean?
Yeah, people
your
are
sense
like,
of destiny?
Apparently, you start booking things and working once you're just resigned and you're just like, you know what? What will be
Yeah,
the
that's true. I think that is true. Yeah.
And yet we can't just resign ourselves because nothing will ever happen. So it's like a fine line.
But I wonder if the surrender is about just surrendering and knowing that your product and having realistic goals, maybe.
I think one of the biggest things.
Surrender?
I think one of the biggest things for me was just knowing that I'm having to face the fact that I might not be the biggest professional actor that I had in my mind as a kid. So actually killing, as they say, you must be prepared to kill your babies, for the pursuit of what is right. So I think at the lowest point when I was lying on the bed and going, fuck my life, I basically said to whoever, the universe or whatever, it was the idea of saying, well, you've obviously got a plan. Tell me what it is. I'll just go with that. If I'm not meant to be in this industry, so be it. That's fine. Like, I just want to live the best version of myself. And so I think that's what I do in one sense come back to, is that I love acting and I can keep pursuing it, but it's not everything now. And maybe the best version of myself is to be in the position that I'm in, helping around it. But still, I get annoyed with that. And I go, no, fuck that.
It's my turn, as you were saying.
And I find it interesting when you're on set or in a show or something and you think, God, is this deeply, deeply fulfilling me? And sometimes you think yes and sometimes you think no, but I think that's true of lots of things,
I think that's about knowing your product. As in, like, I feel like knowing your product is important because you can then do all of those things. If you know who you are, you know what you have to sell, you know sort of what your limits are and how far you can go, then maybe then your business acumen is more effective because you can do all of that. But I feel like there's a lot of us out there that have these dreams and maybe they're realistic, maybe they're not. So I guess how do we know what's realistic and therefore have a business approach to?
Yeah. Well, again, it's what is it that I can do tomorrow? I think that's a great one.
Taking it step by step, day by day, and then it builds to goals.
And the studio for me is me. Yesterday I was writing to John Bell, who runs Bell Shakespeare Company. I've had a conversation with him all year about trying to get him into the studio, and I've had those sorts of conversations with many people now. None of which has ever happened because I've been an actor and they've wanted to talk to me. All of which has been because I've trying to offer them a job. And I think that's the great thing about being in different positions as a producer or whatever. You can actually go, hey, Ryan Core, are you interested in this project?
So ultimately, maybe there are plan Bs. So you do have this plan A, or it sounds like to me that acting is your first love, and that's the dream. And if you could work as an actor, that would be wonderful.
Oh, no, I don't think I'd ever give up the other stuff.
Well, what I was going to say is then you've still got... There are other ways to go about things, and also I think we forget that there are other elements to acting. It's not just about being an actor. What about the rest that comes with it? What about helping to train people? What about working behind the camera?
I guess that's hitting on the point. I don't think if you looked at any of the major A-list actors that have been around for a long time, they're not just actors.
Yeah.
No. You'd look at Michael Caine talking about being part of an ensemble for the last 10 years of Christopher Nolan. He was inside Christopher Nolan's sort of troupe of actors, if you like, and working that relationship.
So maybe that is it. You are still in the pursuit of your dream. You're just going about it a different way.
Oh, I don't think you last. I don't know, but I don't think you last in Hollywood or Australia if you're not putting business up front. I.e., here's a script. Can you produce? Like I was speaking to Ryan Core literally the other day, and he said he's can't come to the studio as much as he'd like to right now because. is producing his first television show. They're all doing it. No one is just an actor at that level because you don't last.
You have to be keeping yourself at the forefront of that industry. And I
think
it's
the locus of control. It's
the ability,
control.
Like as an actor, to be able to go to the people that you're expecting to hire you, but to pull them on board and go, hey, now can I hire?
Look, as a theoretical exercise, if I gave you $15 million or $20 million to make a film, I bet you could pretty much get any actor that you wanted. It would cost you a lot, but you could do it. So it's a dumb thing to say in one sense, but it's just the essence of the comment is anything is possible. It's just how do you get to it, So if it's money that you need to solve, then that's the problem you need to solve. If it's the right script you need to solve, then you need to find the writer.
Getting in the room, getting the right network. It's just about thinking outside the box, I think, and not thinking that you have to fit into that mold that you were talking about at the start, that I am now an actor, I have an agent, and now I wait. It's about, well, what else? And I think also it's about having some accountability for what else do I need to understand about my industry. I don't think it's enough to just be an actor, because how do you know how to relate to everyone else on set, how to understand the project in its whole, if you have no idea what anyone else in the project is doing?
It's very true.
I think it's about, and for you starting up your own company and bringing these people on board, well, the reason they're coming on board is because you have that knowledge now of what it's like to have a company. So
it's something that ideally no one could take away from you. I think that was the big thing for me. I was just so sick of, not people taking things away, but just going, I'm powerless. I don't have any power. I don't have a vehicle to do anything in.
It's so important to not feel, Belle, that you do have that lack of power, because there are other ways. You just need to think outside the box. You really you have to think about it like a career. If you wanted to make it to the CEO of a company, you're not going to get there by just doing one role all the way through, are you?
No, exactly. And that's like when I started out my production company, because I was just being that, as they were talking about, generic actor, sitting there with my agent going, look, I'm waiting for that audition and it's not coming, because you know what, in Perth, sadly, it's probably not going to.
Yeah.
It's terrible in Sydney, it's terrible in London, terrible in LA, but Perth, it's even maybe a little bit worse. It's getting better.
Yeah.
But I think we definitely need to be proactive, and it's like having that checkpoint sheet and going, okay, well, I'm sitting here doing absolutely nothing. So what could I be doing? All right, here's something I could be doing better. All right, once that's done, cross that off the list. Now what's next?
Yeah.
And eventually, by default, you're building your portfolio, you're building your skill sets, and then the jobs start coming.
Yeah.
I'm working more as an actor now that I'm focusing more on directing than I ever did when I was just focusing on acting.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I think approaching your goal in a different way, just look outside the box, look at what you want to achieve and be like, well, how else could I get there? Could I go around a different direction? Not everything is a straight through path.
Again, this idea of coming back to entrepreneurial thinking is, it's the comment I keep coming up with, is the locus of control, right? And it's basically saying that your career is your fault. Your success is your fault, and your failure is your fault, and you have lots of both. But it's just saying that if your agent says, "Sorry, darling, I'm busy," that's your fault, right? It's not inherently your fault. I'm not saying go and beat yourself up, but I'm saying, okay, they're busy, right?
But
they're not getting you. They're not getting you where you need to go. Okay.
Why? It comes back to you.
Well, now
usually.
what? So it's all about problem solution, saying that it's nobody else's fault that the problem isn't getting solved. No one is going to solve your problem. The cavalry is not coming. That's what we call our course. The cavalry is not fucking coming, right? So stop thinking that you're going to be rescued by some director that's going to discover your talent. Once you book that job with Spielberg, you would have fucking earned it.
But also how empowering to feel like you don't have to wait for the cavalry.
You don't have to wait for the cavalry.
You are your own.
Yes.
You can literally be, this sounds really corny, but you can literally be your own hero.
Yes, of course, and you only ever will be. But the thing is that everything is your fault, right? So stop thinking, don't put the control outside of yourself. If your agent is not doing what they need to be doing, then you need to figure out how either to motivate them or go and get it yourself in spite of them or without them or alongside them or whatever.
And I think, I know this actor recently who's doing some pretty cool things recently. And he said to me, I said, wow, the people behind you and that. And he's like, it's all me. And I remember thinking at the time, how egotistical. But in hindsight, it's not. He's not saying that he doesn't acknowledge his agent and his team, but he's put a lot into his career, a lot into being proactive, and he knows that if it wasn't for him, it wouldn't happen. So I think it's that self-respect as well, not, you know, going, oh yeah, look, it all comes down to the people around me, you know, my great agent who was working so hard, because they are. But I think you have to have that bit of self-respect as well, because once you treat yourself as a professional and you understand that you're worth it.
Owning your space and your product and your,
Exactly.
There's also, I think, with actors, the idea of when you get a job, that's when you're an actor, and I think that's really dangerous as well. It's or when you make it, then I'll start the work, and then I'll be accountable, and then I'll keep it going. But and it's very simple to think that way because you're not earning money specifically, and you're off in another job, and you're doing all that sort of stuff. But I think it's one thing I've sort of tried to realise is that you are doing it. This is it. And I remember one of my best friends, Sonny, we were sort of coaching each other at the time because we were both deeply frustrated, and he said to me, this is you living your dream. I was like, what? He's like, this is you living your dream. And I was like, how's that possible? And he's like, well, if it isn't, then you're missing the point. If you're not prepared to go, yeah, this is me living the dream, then you're missing the entire point because you are waiting for the real life to begin, and it never will.
Yeah. And also sometimes part of, I think, the anticipation of something is just as good, and maybe it is important to enjoy the process of our dream coming to fruition. Like you're saying, you are living the dream, you're doing it step by step, one bit at a time, and maybe it's sometimes that's enough. I'm not saying don't keep working towards anything, but enjoy what's happening now.
Absolutely. Colin Firth at his Oscars speech, the first thing he said was, I feel my career has just peaked. He's got an Oscar and he's going, shit, this is the end. I mean, fatalistic. But, you know, the idea is that you never have everything. It's not like, great, I've got my Oscar, now I'll get another 20.
No, a lot of actors seem to retire even after their Oscar win, because it's like, well, the whole time we were working toward a goal, and now we're here, and it's like, where do we go now? So almost the appeal saps away. Yeah. Because as humans, we're competitive. We want to be constantly doing better. But practice, it never makes perfect, does it? But it does make progress, and sometimes we can get to a point where it's like,
I suppose that's where it comes back into doing it for the love, though.
That's right. You need to fall in love with the process and not the outcome. That's the big thing. It's about waking up in the daytime and loving the process, ideally, or loving parts of the process, because you'll never get all of again, the notion of making it is an extremely dangerous idea. It doesn't exist.
It only exists in your own perception anyway. What is making it?
Well, Hollywood sells it.
Yeah, but also I think you determine that. Like, you've decided, well, I've made it if this happens to me. Well, maybe we need to think about changing that idea. Like, we aren't, like you said, living your dream. I'm making it right now.
In hindsight, ideally, you want to go back, 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, and see yourself then and say, hey, Oliver, it's cool. Look where you're at now. That's making it for me, I guess, in part.
I think it's a good reality check each year to think, okay, last year, at this time, what exactly was I doing, and where did I want to be, and where am I now? And if it's maybe not quite where you wanted to be, but you can see there's obvious progress, you have to be able to look and go, look, I'm doing well. Like, hold yourself accountable, but not beat yourself up.
And also the idea, ideally, of entrepreneurialism, once you get into a space where you have accountability, ideally you can make some money out of either that or another job. And so you're giving yourself these two key metrics as an actor, which is more money and more time. That's the thing you need to be an actor, right? Is more money and more time. So then, therefore, ideally, for us anyway, with the studio, if it doesn't all tank and fall in a hole, then I can have my career until I'm 100 and I'm 38. So nothing majorly dramatic has happened yet as an actor, but I know that I can afford to be one until I was 100. So who knows? You might have the 5 years of glory, I mean, again, Michael Caine thought his career was finished at 60 and he had another 20 years. And he was retired. He was in Florida. He was retired at 65. And then someone said, come and do this film. And he did. And then that was a success. And then
shade him again.
Yeah. So, I think it's too simplistic. I think the way that we think about the industry is so simplistic, and it can be dangerous, but again, the power piece is you can have the career that you want. You just have to work hard for it, and you have to look at what is it that I can do tomorrow to make it better, whatever that is.
On that note, we are reaching the 49-minute mark. This
Woof.
has been a long one, so it is time to start wrapping up. But we always ask the same question towards the end, which is, what do you wish someone had told you when you first started your career as a creative? Or as an actor?
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. I have no idea. I have no idea. The first thing that comes to my mind is that it's okay.
Yeah.
That it's all okay. Yeah, probably to love yourself a little bit more than I did in the early days. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a great question. What I
Something
wish
to
they
think
told
about.
me.
Yeah, or just something you wish you knew, or something you wish someone had said to you, so you maybe stopped going down a path, or
it sounds odd, but don't respect people as much as you did. Not to disrespect them, but just to not. I always have had a problem with authority in the sense that I just fall at authorities for, oh my God, I'm sorry, yes sir, no sir, private schoolboy. And I did that for every stage.
But you wish you had more, confidence in yourself about you being at their level.
Just more gravitas into my own sense of self. I kept giving myself away to everyone all the time.
Which comes back to like knowing yourself and feeling, that you're worth it, isn't it? Self-worth.
Probably, yeah.
At least you're on top of it now. At least you're on top of it
I feel like Ollie might still be working on this one. I can see his brain going, hey, why am I doing that?
No,
It's a hard question. I don't know what I would answer to that.
No, it's just.
we should ask ourselves sometimes,
I think we should. Yeah.
Next time.
Yeah, but it's just yeah. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah.
All right,
well,
wonderful.
Thank you. Nat's not in the room, but we thank her, and we also thank Stella, who is also
love
no longer
Stella.
in the room.
I'm trying to find them.
And Ollie, we thank you too.
Thank you
you
too.
so much for your time and coming on board. And guys, go and check out the Hub Studio. How can we find you?
Oh yes, www.thehubstudio.com.au, or on Instagram and Facebook.
Excellent.
Oh, I'll just have to add you on Instagram in a minute.
Yes.
Yeah, we love our Instagram.
I love it.
We
Charlotte, don't
do.
we?
There will be some tags following this podcast if you go and check
And we got-
us out on Instagram, which
Yes.
I should know my handles.
Post-traumatic stress, I think. So post-traumatic stress pod.
And that's dramatic, not traumatic. So
Because although being a creative can be traumatic, it's more dramatic, to be honest.
I think so. I am, at least, anyway.
Alright.
So yeah, thank you guys. And next episode, please tune in. We actually very excited. We're having Annie Murtaugh-Monks. She's going to come on board and say hello to us and talk about a few things, which is going to be really exciting and hopefully beneficial for anyone listening. So thank you, Bella.
All right. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Ollie.
you, guests.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Nat. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you
and
for listening.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to Post Dramatic Stress. To connect with us or to register to come on the podcast, visit us at www.lettingcharlotteout.com or email us via postdramaticstresspod@gmail.com.